In the stone heart of the world, madness wore a crown. They called him Gaius. The people called him a god. But Rome knew the true name of its master was fear. The legend begins not in battle, but in a whisper of forgotten blood. The blood of emperors, thick with paranoia and promise. He inherited an empire, but craved the power of Mount Olympus. To taste the forbidden is to invite the gods to dinner.
Loyalty was a temporary garment, easily discarded.
His first acts were gifts. His next were warnings.
The Guard knew the truth before the Senate did. In the heat and the darkness, the true desires surfaced. The paranoia was a fever. He saw betrayal in every shadow. He sought silence, but heard only the whispers of the dead. The Empire was his stay, and his tragedy was about to begin. He began to confuse the divine right with divine madness.
Inside the palace walls, Rome was held hostage by one man's whim.
Even the soldiers, loyal to the eagle, began to look away. Power is a pillar. It holds up the world, and it crushes the man beneath it. Every laugh was forced, every compliment a potential trap. The fire was lit. The light would soon consume everything. This is not history. This is a haunting. And it starts with the word incarnation. He did not want to rule Rome. He wanted to be Rome. Empire was his body, its pain, his pleasure. Every tax, every order, a further descent into the absurd. Error meant blood. Attention meant death. Ignorance was a luxury. He tasted every pleasure, but remained eternally unsatisfied. The dungeons were busy. His paranoia was Rome's greatest builder. Even Dionysus wept at the excess. The horse was consul, the Senate a joke. They watched their power wither, replaced by an animal's whim. Gloria, ruina, animus. The emperor's vanity became the empire's undoing. He no longer saw men. He saw the reflection was a lie. The god had no face. He burned the past to create a new mythology. his own. Even in the madness, there was a strange, terrible beauty. Behind this door, the rituals began. The forbidden theater of the soul. Rome was waiting for the storm to break.
The fire was creeping up the walls.
True audience was the future, and they were already judging. The wheel of fortune was spinning, and his face was about to land on the edge. Even the gods have their limits, their boundaries, their prisons. The light was failing. The darkness was winning. The Empire was listening. The silence was deafening. Its divinity was forged in the dark with forgotten gods.
He wanted to see Jupiter. He only saw a madman.
He shed his boots and walked the paths of his own insanity. But a tremor in the water proves the vision is not real.
He searched for power not in Rome, but in the forbidden cults of the East.
The air was thick with smoke, incense, and unholy promises. To drink the night. To taste the divine poison. Cruelty was a mask for his profound, terrible loneliness. Rome was his cage, and he kept checking the lock. The great past was fading. Only the present was grotesque.
The wounds of his childhood never truly healed. They merely festered.
Money was the dust of the Empire. He scattered it for sport. The door to his sanity was being permanently drawn shut. The day's work was the constant erasure of his terrible nights. Even the eagle was tired of flying into the storm.
The rage was a physical presence, a constant pressure.
My word is law. My thought is fate. My wish is Rome. Even the smallest life was a prisoner of his regime.
They stopped hoping for his change. They waited for his end.
The walls were breathing. The palace was alive with anticipation. The Golden Age was nailed down, helped by a single, insake man. The time for subtlety was over. The performance was due. The suffering was administrative. Brutality, a daily routine. Even the instruments of his power were victims of his mood. The god could not sleep. The fear was reciprocal. Resistance was a whisper. The conspiracy, a ghost in the halls. To oppose him was not treason. It was a final, terrible act of love for Rome. Outside the Golden Palace, Rome lived, endured, and waited. Innocence suffered the weight of the Emperor's fever. Time was measured in drops of fear, collecting into a flood. The storm was coming for him, and he smiled. The guard was the wall, unmoving, patient. He walked on fire. He walked on glass. He walked on his own fate. The ultimate control, the choice of his own death. Even in his mad godhood, he needed the hands of a servant. He purified himself for the coming act.
A silent prayer for a new dawn.
The executioners were ready, not for treason, but for mercy. The march of destiny. The footsteps of history. The moment of truth was no longer a matter of days. It was a matter of steps. The door to history was about to be opened. The silence was broken by the final, terrible scream. They stabbed the god, and they found only a man. The shock was not the pain. It was the realization of his mortality. Fire was extinguished. The ashes of his reign scattered. The deed was done. The relief was instantly replaced by terror. What happens when the tyrant falls? The ground shakes. The true power of Rome was the loyalty of the man with the sword. The crown was a lie. The blood were the truth. Rome heard the news and held its breath. The excesses were being cleaned. The history was being written. The mad god was dead. The empire remained. Who will rule now? The question was heavier than the corpse. Memory would be a stain. Small, but eternal. The next generation would only know the myth. The seat of power was cold, waiting for a new warmth. The official history was being sealed. The true story, forgotten. Rome had survived the storm, but not the memory of the fire. Madness was a lesson. Power is a fragile thing. The reflection is always broken. Let the emblems of false godhood burn.
The fire that bathes an empire leaves a permanent scar.
And only the stone remains. But the story never dies.